I've had a few conversations with students lately as well as with some of you, and so I've decided to get in this extremely awkward position and sit on the floor and talk about the hole in this head and do you need one? So do you need to put a hole in the resonant head of your bass drum? Is there any reason why we would go cutting holes into heads? Because it affects the sound in a big way. If you don't think it does, go cut a hole in the floor tom, in the resonant head of your floor tom, and see what it does to the tone. It does things to the drum. So there are definite opinions on both sides of it. And for me, it's yes and no. It just depends on the situation. So let's break this down. The whole situation came about specifically for miking drums, and so to get that internal mic inside of there, they need a hole to go through that. So a lot of engineers in the studio love those because they can get inside of that bass drum and get all the sounds in there. We do sacrifice some of the tone whenever we do that. But the times when I do not like using a hole in my resonant head, really if I can help it, I don't like using one. But specifically if I'm playing a more singer-songwriter type of a vibe, if I'm playing a jazz gig, I want that kick drum to have tone. I want it to have a ring to it. I want it to have a definite tone, not like a tom, a kick drum, but with resonance to it. And if we cut a hole in that front head, it really affects that tone and how that sounds. And so that's an example of when I would not want one. If I'm wanting the resonance of that, if I'm wanting a big, full, round tone from that kick drum, I'm not gonna poke a hole in the front of that head. If I'm going into the studio and I'm playing rock, I'm playing pop, I'm playing those types of gigs, I need to mic inside of the kick drum. There are options now that allow us to not have to do that. There are some internal mics that you can go, like if you have a tom mount on the top here, you can actually go through that tom mount with a cable so that you can put that mic inside of there and have it just nest. That's one option. Another reason that a lot of people would want to cut a hole in their front head that a lot of you may not have thought about is whether you play into the drum or you play out of the drum. So whether the bass drum beater comes off of the drum whenever you play or whether you bury it and it goes into the drum. Because if you bury that, what's going to happen is you're going to get those flutters that come after that. If you do not have a hole in the front of your bass drum, that air is just going to be bouncing around in there. So with as much force as you hit, it's going to be coming back at you with almost as much force. When it does that, it pops that beater back a little bit. There's air trapped inside of there. And so that's going to give you a lot more of that buzz that's happening after the initial stroke. So if you bury the bass drum beater, if that's just your style, then poke a hole in the front of that bass drum head. Obviously you want to do it, you want to measure it, you want to do it correctly. They make kits for that. But when you do, that's going to let that air, you can just put your hand there and you can actually feel the air coming out. And whenever you mic a bass drum, you don't necessarily want to put that mic right at that bass drum because there's a lot of air being forced out of that hole whenever you hit. So if you bury the bass drum beater, you definitely want to put a hole in that front. Otherwise you're going to get a lot of weird buzzing after you hit that. So if you're at a gig where you want more tone of the drum, where you want that option to have it have more resonance, don't put a hole in that reso head. If you're needing to mic it internally and you don't have a hole at the top for your toms, then you may need to poke a hole in it as well. If you bury that bass drum beater, you probably want to poke a hole in it. So I hope you've enjoyed me sitting awkwardly in front of this bass drum to discuss whether you should have a hole or not inside of that resonant bass drum head. If you've got any questions or if you have comments about this, you all have opinions and I learn things from you every day. So put those down in the comments section. What's your opinion? Do you like one? Do you not like a hole in that resonant head as well? Hit that thumbs up button if it's helped you. Share it with somebody you think it may help. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And if you don't have post notifications on, if you're subscribing, you don't have post notifications on, you're not getting notified about all the new stuff that's being uploaded. So you should definitely click that. Jump over to the website, check out the Drum Better Daily membership, whether you're beginner or advanced, it's got a ton of stuff in there and a very focused and organized way to work through it. But whatever you do, I will see you here in the next video, and I'm gonna get up off the floor now.